The knock came on a March night in 1603. It wasn't a polite knock. This was the sound of iron against wood, heavy, violent, final, the kind of knock that says without words, your old life ends here. Merga was in bed when she heard it. For one frozen moment, they stared at each other in the darkness. They both knew, in that terrible, wordless way that prey knows. In Fulda, in the year 1603, everyone knew. Blasius leaped from the bed first. He rushed to the door, already talking, already bargaining. "There's been a mistake," he was saying. The guards didn't care. They had a warrant signed by Balthasar Nuss himself. They found Merga in her nightdress, her hand instinctively curved around her swollen belly. She was 6 months pregnant now. Surely, she thought, surely they can see. Blasius tried to bribe them, but Balthasar Nuss didn't want a bribe. They dragged her from her home in her nightdress, barefoot on the cold cobblestones. Neighbors peeked through shuttered windows. Most simply closed their shutters and prayed. Merga watched her house grow smaller in the darkness. She crossed a threshold, not just physical, but existential. She was entering a place where the only rule was pain. The witch tower smelled like death and despair. The sharp bite of old urine soaked into stone floors. The sweet rot of infected wounds left to fester without treatment. The metallic tang of dried blood in cracks and corners. This was where Fulda kept its monsters. Or rather, where it created them. They threw Merga into a cell barely large enough to lie down in. The door slammed shut with a sound like a coffin lid closing. And then, silence. Screams echoing from somewhere deeper in the tower. The skittering of rats in the darkness. Water dripping, endlessly dripping. For the first few days, Merga held on to her dignity. She demanded to see her husband. She demanded a lawyer. She spoke with the voice of a woman who still believed. But the dungeon doesn't care about your beliefs. The cold seeped into her bones and wouldn't leave. The hunger gnawed at her stomach. The darkness played tricks on her mind. Day and night became meaningless. The only constant was the child inside her. And her captors, they were patient. Isolation does half their work for them. While Merga shivered in her cell, Balthasar Nuss sat at his desk. He was a bureaucrat. To him, Merga Bien was a ledger entry. He tallied up the value of her estate. But there was a problem. The pregnancy. The law was explicit. You cannot torture a pregnant woman. This law was Merga's shield. But Balthasar Nuss was not a man easily deterred by laws. Laws are flexible, so he constructed one. If the child Merga carried was human, she was protected. But what if it wasn't human? What if the thing growing inside her was something else entirely? It was brilliant in its evil. They brought Merga up from the dungeon for her first formal interrogation. She stumbled in the torchlight. She was still wearing the same nightdress, but she still had her dignity. The interrogation chamber was designed to extinguish that belief. It was a museum of pain. The thumbscrews, the rack, the strappado. They called it tuition. The executioner walked Merga through each instrument. He was bored as he spoke. Confess, they told her. Merga refused. I am with child. That's when Nuss played his hand. He summoned the experts. They examined Merga. This swelling cannot be the work of God. It is the work of the devil. They had stripped away her motherhood. The order was given. Peinliche Befragung. They started with the thumbscrews. Then they began to turn. Merga screamed. But she didn't break. They escalated. Days blurred into weeks, and still the baby moved inside her. The human mind can only endure so much. Merga Bien reached that point, and she began to speak. Yes, she was a witch. Not my husband, she said, a demon. With those words, she condemned them both. The torture stopped. They carried her back to her cell and left her in the darkness. And in the silence that followed, the terrible, ringing silence, Merga Bien understood what she had done. She had confessed. In the eyes of the law, she was guilty. There was no taking it back. She touched her belly, where the baby, human, innocent, real, still kicked. She had condemned them both. The fire was coming. And there was nothing in this world or the next that she could do to stop it. Light. After months entombed in the darkness of the witch tower, the first thing Merga Bien perceived was light. It struck her eyes like a physical blow, violent, searing, impossible. She raised her shackled hands to shield her face. For one cruel heartbeat, she allowed herself to hope. Perhaps she was being released. Then her vision cleared, and she saw the cart, the wooden stake loaded in the back, already blackened from previous fires, the executioner standing beside it. The priests clutching their crosses. It was autumn 1603. The fields were golden stubble beneath a sky of perfect blue. It was a beautiful day in Fulda, a perfect day to kill. The procession was theater, every element carefully choreographed. This was ritual. The Malefismeister led the way. Then came the cart, and in it, Merga. She was almost unrecognizable. The woman who had once worn silk now wore a rough linen shift. Her hands were twisted, broken things. But the most devastating detail, she was still pregnant. The child inside her still lived, still kicked. The cart lurched forward over cobblestones. Every bump sent fresh agony through her shattered body. But she was beyond pain now. History rarely records the inner lives of victims. The crowd was enormous. This was the entire town. They had brought their children. This was entertainment. But look closer at their faces. Some were jeering, but others in that crowd were silent. If it could happen to Merga Bien, it could happen to anyone. So they cheered. These were Merga's neighbors, and now they were screaming for her death. History doesn't tell us. The cart arrived at the Gerichtsplatz. A wooden stake rose from the center of the square. The wood had been stacked with professional precision. Soldiers formed a perimeter. Balthasar Nuss watched from a raised platform. They lifted Merga from the cart. They chained her to the post. A judge stepped forward and read the sentence. The crowd roared approval. A priest approached. "Repent," he whispered. We don't know her last words. The executioner approached with a burning torch, and the crowd fell silent. Fire is not a merciful death. The dry straw caught first, crackling like breaking bones. Orange flames danced through the kindling. The heat came before the fire touched her. Then the flames reached her feet. A scream tore through the air. The flames climbed higher. If mercy existed anywhere in this nightmare, but mercy was rare at executions. And then, after an eternity, it stopped. Merga Bien was gone. The child inside her was gone. There was no demon. The fire burned for hours, and before those ashes were even cold, they cataloged everything. Merga Bien paid for her own murder. She was just one name in a ledger. For 3 years, the smoke over Fulda never cleared. But evil, even institutional evil, is mortal. The moment he died, the witch trials stopped. He ordered Balthasar Nuss arrested. Poetic justice? Perhaps. But hollow. Empty. Today, Fulda is beautiful. Time has covered the blood with beauty. But should we forget? This isn't just history. This is a mirror. When they come for your neighbor, what will you do? The answer to that question is the only thing standing between civilization and the fire. In memory of Merga Bien and the 250 victims of the Fulda witch trials, may we remember them. May we never become the crowd that watched them burn.